As VFX have evolved over the decades, so too have the worlds we're able to bring to life on the big screen. Big blue aliens, giant monsters, Carrie Fisher, all possible thanks to the last 10 years of VFX. And yeah, these are all great, but VFX have also helped us depict more conceptual ideas, one in particular. For reference, I made a video compiling about 50 psychedelic film scenes, so you know I'm not just talking about the vague concept of drugs in film. What we're looking at is the unique techniques employed by specific filmmakers to convey the psychedelic experience. And obviously these are in no particular order and only a little bit biased. So the dictionary definition of psychedelic, Urban Dictionary definition, as it relates to film, is things that seem inspired by or seem to replicate the experience of mind-altering drugs. And I think a good place to start is 1941's Dumbo. Yeah, you know the scene. And yeah, in the context of the story, it's alcohol, not hallucinogens, but it's the first good example I can think of. The pink elephants on parade scene has been referenced a lot of times, and I think that's because it introduced decades of kids to a certain kind of feeling. It wasn't the scariest psychedelic kids moment, but the inverted look created by swapping the usual black outline of the characters with white and blackening the canvas to allow for more vibrant colours creates a pretty effective surreal experience. Some things I want to point out are the rubbery, otherworldly movements of the animated elephants, combined with the music which seems to be diegetic sound caused by the elephants and their mutated musical instruments. Plus the animators' use of colours and patterns later in the scene seem to be there literally just to trip out the audience. Same with that goddamn strobe effect. Also, the elephants are dancing around the frame of the canvas and breaking the fourth wall here, which is pretty cool. Moving on from animation, the next example is a classic. Trying to trip out your audience? Want guaranteed results? Use the multicolored tunnel pattern moving towards infinite horizon effect. This kaleidoscopic effect has its very own evolution in film because of how many times it's been used. From 1967's exploitation film The Trip to 2018's Annihilation and everything in between, this effect has remained a strong representation of psychedelia. I'd say the effect is based on the classic cognitive optical illusion of the warping tunnel, but it seems to also be based on the theory of multiple reflecting surfaces, which inspired the creation of the kaleidoscope and the House of Mirrors. And this all culminated in the creation of, you guessed it, the Stargate sequence, from 2001. Unfortunately for VFX artist Douglas Trumbull, CGI in 1966 was lacking, so he got creative with practical effects. Using the slit scan effect, shooting at a low shutter speed through a slit and moving backlit artwork horizontally behind the slit, Trumbull and Kubrick created neon patterns which moved as though originating from a distant plane. But check out Filmmaker IQ's video on slit scan photography for something you can actually understand. The visuals of 2001 would of course inspire Gaspar Noé and his drug trip of a film Enter the Void, although luckily for Noé these effects were now achievable in the comfort of his own home. I couldn't find much on the making of the DMT sequences, but playing around with the fractal noise effect and 3D space in After Effects could create something similar. The next film is another good example of a unique representation of psychedelia, and it is Panos Cosmatos' Mandy. I hope I got that right. Like Enter the Void, the whole film really plays as a surreal experience, debatably a metaphor for LSD. During the scene in question, a captured Mandy is forced to induce some hallucinogenic substance and watches Jeremiah Sand, the mysterious leader of a cult, as he hovers over her monologuing. While Cosmatos could have really amped up the VFX in the scene and made the drug trip super surreal, he instead settles on more subtle techniques. And thank God for that, because the scene is 10 minutes long. A frame ghosting effect trails after the movements of every character, which would normally be anything but subtle, however the camera remains locked off for the majority of the scene, and if it moves it does so very slowly. This results in a lingering reality effect which is reminiscent of something experienced by users of hallucinogens. The not so subtle colour tint over the whole scene reinforces the surreal state of the characters and contrasts the blue ghost frames. Also, if you listen to the underlying audio beneath each line of dialogue, you can hear what sounds like a chorus effect.
I think that they're sensational.
Each line seems to be duplicated in post-production and dropped in pitch slightly, something often used by sound designers to create a demonic voice. An otherworldly reverb effect also lingers after each slice of audio, despite the room being pretty tiny.
Thankfully, he showed me another path.
When Jeremiah approaches the camera and breaks the fourth wall, a freeze frame of Mandy's face slowly fades over the top of his during his monologue. Because of the strong tint and the fact that her face is tracked to his, this effect takes ages to sink in, and when you realise it's happening, amazing. Taking a look at these examples, it just goes to show what an evolution in post-production tools allows us to achieve. VFX can still be used to experiment with ideas unique to each and every filmmaker, and psychedelia is just one of these. Of course, VFX has a long way to go before we can even think about remaking the true psychedelic masterpiece, The Lawnmower Man. Thank you for
watching.
All aboard!